Hello, people of YouTube. My name is Steve Gray. Thank you for watching. Where a guitar is made, the country that it's made in, doesn't matter. So let's take a look here at what Paul Reed Smith is saying. The country a guitarist is made in does not matter. Paul Reed Smith thinks people should stop obsessing about guitars being made in America. It's always been about the skill level of the guitar maker. On guitar making, a great deal of emphasis is placed on the location in which instruments are made. Guitars are made in the USA tend to command higher prices than those made in Japan, Indonesia, South Korea, for example. I would argue Japan maybe not so much, but that is what it is. But is there really as much of a difference as we think? Guitar gear aficionados have debated this for years. Paul Reed Smith, one of the world's top guitar makers at PRS, has given a fuel to say that believers know it doesn't really matter where the guitar is made. In a column in a new issue of Premier Guitar, Paul Reed Smith said, "I've always believed that it's not about the country that an instrument is made, it's about the skill level of the guitar maker. When we first started traveling overseas guitar manufacturer facilities, we found that almost all of their training over the decades has been to go fast, while our teaching about how to make instruments is about how to go well. Once they know how to go well, they didn't know how to slow down, and the guitars they produce are of the same caliber as what we make in here." He adds, "We've been deeply concerned about this, that we teach our overseas partners how we want instruments to be using our techniques. So as a definitive statement, the guitar a country is made in doesn't matter much. The skill and care of the instrument maker does matter." He explained that this position was cemented when he was asked by Carlos Santana to produce a more affordable PRS model for his students who want the same guitar as him. He said, "Sure, I'll get you a prototype for your approval." We brought in the prototype, and he was impressed. And his comment was, "This was made in America, right?" And I said, "No, this was made overseas." The contract for his approval was on the table. He leaned over and signed it as fast as he could. Offering advice to guitar buyers, he concluded, "Looking for an instrument, you should elevate it the same way regardless of the country of manufacturer. How does it look? How does it feel? How is it in your hands? How does it sound acoustically? How does it sound electrical? And most importantly, will it do the job you want it to do? Guitar is a tool to make music and should be elevated as such no matter its country of origin. Very often a country will have a reputation for being better at making some kinds of products than others, but that changes over time." So I think the biggest country that you can take away here is Japan. If I were to tell you that Japan makes terrible garbage guitars, you would probably laugh at me and tell me I am very, very wrong. Well, that's not how it started. So before CNC machines were really mass produced, and even a little before that, Japan was making these Sears catalog guitars, Teisco, St. George, Kawaki, Kawi, Kiwi, Hondo 2, all these random freaking brands that were just copycats of Gibson and Fender's body shapes, and sometimes headstock shapes too. And they were cheaply made, fastly produced, and typically made out of plywood. Plywood guitars, slap some paint on there, threw some microphonic pickups in there with the random switches they had lying around, and you were good to go. And I have owned a couple of these guitars, typically made in the 60s to early 70s, just for the time frame we're talking about here. They didn't really start in the 50s too much. It was more mass producing in the 60s, 70s. And the one had a bow in the neck, like really bad, where it became somebody's slide guitar. I sold it for pretty cheap because of the bow in the neck, and it became somebody's slide guitar. And then the second one, it was just something nobody ever played. It was very beat up, poorly designed, didn't stay in tune. That was the St. George. It had a Sorrento E10 and a St. George hollow body. The electronics did not work, but yet again, no one probably touched it for many, many years, so I had to go in and finick with those. And you couldn't actually access the truss rod. The way they built it, they didn't route out enough space for you to adjust the truss rod. So I actually had to use a Dremel tool and knock out some wood on the headstock of the guitar. It's under the truss rod cover, so you don't see it anyway, not a big deal. in order to actually be able to adjust the truss rod to get the neck aligned properly, because they didn't care. They were just slapping these things together. And that can also be said with a lot of the Chinese guitars, I would say probably more so the 80s and 90s. You get into the 2000s, pretty much everybody has a CNC machine. So, in all honesty, if Gibson allowed Epiphone to do it, Epiphone could probably make a better or equally as good Gibson Les Paul than they can make in the USA. They do the scraping of the binding everywhere. They put binding on the fretboard. They have, American pickups that they're using over there now too, because they're putting American pickups in some of the guitars. The only thing they really need to do is maybe a little bit different neck angle, because I think Epiphone has a little bit of a less of a neck angle, so less headstock breakage, and put a nitrocellulose finish on the thing. And I can almost guarantee you, one for one, you would not be able to tell the difference between the two guitars. That is why the Chipsons are also getting very scary, because you don't really know what they're doing over there. Some of these people might be bringing these parts home and putting Gibson on the headstock and selling them, or straight out of the Epiphone factories. We have no idea. But you see some of the Chipsons that are coming out now, and because of the CNC machines and the new technology, they're starting to have fret nibs on the fretboard, which they never had in the past. They're starting to have the correct bridge style with the posts versus the screw slots. They're getting the dimensions correct. The only thing is they're still not really putting the correct truss rods in there. I never see them with the Allen nut truss rod, and the electronics in them are sometimes Epiphone. A lot of the times you'll see Epiphone pickups in the Chipsons. But with modern technology, it really doesn't matter where it's made. If you look at a company like Eastman, for example, they essentially build a Gibson Les Paul for a third of the price. And they're still using nitro. They're still using very good pickups. They always make sure they weigh in under 8 pounds. I'll actually bring them up for you. They are a little expensive, Eastman guitars, and they make a whole bunch of really good stuff. They are a widely known, reputable manufacturer of guitars in China. And it's just something like, look at this thing. I don't even know what this is. It looks very nice. I hope we can find a Les Paul. Yep, here we go. There's your Les Paul. And right there, one-piece mahogany body, ebony fingerboard, 12-inch radius, Jescar fresh wire, 23 3/4 scale length, solid carved maple top, one-piece mahogany neck, just, $2,869. And they're essentially beating Gibson at their own game, because this, I would argue, can probably go toe-to-toe with an R9 or R8 or whatever. This is the 59 model. I think they have 58 as well. They have a 57 if you want the custom style guitar. And if you're willing to look past the brand, some people argue these are a better guitar. I've literally never seen a review on an Eastman that wasn't like, holy crap, this thing is amazing. And yeah, it's going to be a little expensive, $2,869, but would you rather pay that, or would you rather pay $10,000 for an R9, And this thing is, a lot of people argue this is also better than a regular Gibson Les Paul Standard that cost around the same price point in retrospect. So it really doesn't matter anymore. As I said, there used to be a bunch of crappy guitars out of China, so that was, that's part of it too. And Japan turned itself around in the 70s and 80s, because in the 70s and 80s, Gibson and Fender were both owned by corporations that were doing things very cheaply and didn't care. You had 3-bolt Fenders that everybody hated. You had pancake body, 3-piece maple neck Gibsons nobody liked either. And there was some good ones in there. As with any guitar manufacturer, there's going to be good ones and going to be bad ones. The chances of you getting either or, it's kind of 50-50. It's something that this price point, I would expect them all to be good. But if you're buying a $300 guitar, yes, it can be manufactured very well and be an amazing guitar. Like I have a 1999 Squier that plays fantastic. The electronics unfortunately died, so I did have to replace them. But, you can do that. You can buy a cheaper guitar, put some nice electronics in it, and it'll sound fantastic and equally as good. The materials are usually the same. The body's usually still alder, the neck's maple, fretboard wood is maple or rosewood. You can get all the specs you need. In terms of resale value, that is another thing. That is another thing completely. And in terms of resale value, America will always win by far. In terms of Fender, Gibson, Martin, Taylor, just to name, I think those are the main four American USA facilities. If you're looking for resale value, you're looking for collectability, you're looking for something that, pretty much if you hold on to it, you're not really going to lose money, or very little money you'll lose depending on the model, then yes, go for a USA Fender or a Gibson. That's what I would highly recommend, or a Martin or a Taylor, and just keep them in good condition. And 9 out of 10, you're never really going to lose money on that instrument. Something like an Eastman, you will lose money. So it's kind of what are you looking for? Are you looking for something that will play fantastic and sound fantastic, and everything's fantastic, and you can deal with the fact that it doesn't say Gibson or Fender on the headstock, or do you have to have, you want to pay extra for the Fender or Gibson, which a lot of people do. And I have, I've never owned an American Fender, but I have owned Made in Mexico Fender. I have several Gibsons, and I also have some cheaper guitars. I have an Epiphone bass, Epiphone Les Paul. I have a Squier Strat. I'm trying to think what other cheaper stuffs I have. I have a Yamaha acoustic, which I wouldn't really consider that cheap, in all honesty. I have a Michael Kelly guitar at the moment that I'm trying to trade, because honestly, I don't really like that guitar, but that's what it comes down to. So in terms of playability and sound, you can find something really good for $500 easy. In terms of resale value, if that's what you're looking for, then you got to go with Fender and Gibson. That's what I would say. So ultimately, I would say though, this day and age, if it's a reputable factory and they know what they're doing and they have good guitar makers, it doesn't really matter anymore, because 90% of the work at this point in time is done with machines. At this point in time, they can paint it by a machine. They don't always do it, but they can paint it by a machine. They can color it with a machine. They can cut out the neck profile with a machine. But there's a lot of handwork. There's some hand sanding on these things. Sometimes they do paint them by hand. Electronics are typically wired by hand, but they have the PCB boards now, where a lot of the times you can just plug into it and be good to go. This does not have a PCB board. A lot of people don't like them, just for a reference. But one of these days I'll get a hold of an Eastman. Probably a used one, in all honesty. I don't think I want to pony up for a brand new one. But I would love to have one of these things. I played one once. I think it was a 58 style, and I didn't particularly care for the neck profile. A little bit chunky for me. But we'll see what happens. And yeah, I guess that's it. So hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell, leave a like, share. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, have a good one.